So we're live on Facebook, and I'm with Karen. And Darren has told me just now that she was born ready, so we're ready to jump in.
And we're talking about confidence, right?
We're talking about confidence, exactly. Well, just to put everything into context, we've been on the Co-Creative Sex dialogues, kind of digging into the whole conversation around shame and body shame, but shame extends to more than body, but it shows up a lot in body. But it can be sexual shame, it can be all kinds of stuff that basically stop us from fully enjoying our lives. And so I thought it would be really cool to have you on the show, who is an expert of self-love. And just off the bat like this, before I introduce a little bit more about you, do you feel that self-love is the antidote to shame?
Well, so I'm laughing at the fact that you're talking about shame in my head because every day, all the time, it's synchronicities after synchronicities. But today was another synchronicity. I think I feel this way on a daily basis about shame because I'm so aware of it that I'm just like, wow, there goes shame again. And yeah, and today I was like, it's one of the main things that affects me in my life is shame and how it plays on. So for example, like this is shame, we're talking about shame, and once you kind of understand it on a body level, you just know it comes in and where it's coming in for and what different topics. It's not like, ooh, sexual shame. It's like this feeling of shame. It's present, so it has no.
How would you describe that feeling? Like, is it,
So it's just
embarrassment or,
just about despair. So I had sorry, my client, you're here with me, right?
Yeah, you froze for a second, now you're back.
Okay. I don't know why there's been a bit of a glitch today on the internet in my room, which is really weird. But anyways, going back to what I was saying, for example, sometimes I get a little bit, like today, a client messaged me this beautiful message. This is my older client that's not working with me anymore. Just like,
oh no,
for the in me, like, and just giving this beautiful message to me. Am I still with you?
You are, but like we've been glitching a little bit. So we heard about the beautiful client.
Yeah.
And something happened.
Yeah, that was one way of like, there was a little bit of this like resistance that came into, not resistance, but I felt it and I was like, like, it's like, there's a little bit of this like, oh my God, love just came in, and I watched my body just be like, that's a lot. And like, that it's not shame, but it's kind of has this like resistance, this feeling that feels a little uncomfortable. So it's like, okay, I didn't label that.
I think we missed one piece though. Was it the piece around you? So you had this old client. So just recap that, because I didn't really follow the idea.
Yeah, so like she reached out and she shared love. Okay. And I felt a little bit of this contraction feeling of like, like, mind doesn't make sense of it, but the body's like, ooh, there was a contraction there.
Oh, yeah.
There was another thing that happened around getting something done, or writer's block, or I had the feeling of like, I'm in shame around that experience of having the writer's block. It makes it even worse about it. So it's like, I don't look at it as shame. I just look at these ways that I feel bad about what I'm experiencing, and it's a contraction feeling inside me that prevents me. Sometimes it's also like that thing when I used to have, when I used to open up my account, or my financial accounts, and I would feel a sense of like uncomfortable feeling that I just did not want to reach, so I would just ignore do my finances. So these like, I don't know if you
nice way of describing it, actually. I would add like a little element of embarrassment, but it doesn't necessarily always mean that. The way you're describing it's just this feeling of like a contraction. You're just like seeing it as a body sensation of kind of Yeah, it's kind of interesting to just think about it as like what's going on in the body.
Yeah, how are you, like, what's uncomfortable about this thing? A lot of the things around with shame too, I used to, when I got really even more aware of the embarrassment feeling, I would speed up, or I would do something totally awkward that I was like, wow, that's actually normal what I do when I experience shame, but I just don't want to experience it. So I'll just like sing something loud. Like my body would uncontrollably like react in a funny way, or I'll do something fast and just because I don't want to
Yeah.
feel shame. And I'm like, oh my God, what is driving this thing? It's so interesting when you get to it. But
Huh, I love it. So there's like this contraction and then an acceleration to like get out of it almost like.
get out of it, don't feel it.
Cool. Well, okay, when I look into your biography, I heard the word transpersonal counselor. Well, what does that mean exactly? I was like looking up the dictionary, transpersonal.
Yeah, I took the psychology part out and I just put transpersonal counselor, and I think it's for obviously for a purpose. So transpersonal just means a spiritual, um it's transcending the personal. So it's just a spiritual perspective. You're kind
Mhm.
of holding space for something bigger than just bodies, and there's a
Mhm.
soul, there's spirit, there's something, there's
Mhm.
intelligence moving through. So it's just having that spiritual perspective,
Mhm.
and that word goes right in front of psychology, which
Yeah.
that psychology is still being used in the program that I went to, or like it's like positive psychology. So psychology is still being used, but with that perspective of transpersonal in front of it. So it was just a
Wow.
combination of spiritual and psychology put together when I went to the school. And so
Yeah.
now it's really important for me when I do work with clients that they have an aspect of spirituality or they're open to that. So I just put transpersonal counselor. But yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, the whole concept of that is just there's the divine.
Right. Well, I also like how you also then another part is like there's like trauma and body and yoga. So there's this kind of like that transcending quality, but then there's this body experience too. And would you bring the somatic in there as well?
Yeah, can't do anything without having the integration of it all. Unfortunately, it sucks that we have these divisions, but
Yeah.
if you're trying to
Yeah.
understand healing in yourself, you have to go to all those bits. So,
Well, that's why I find it really interesting how you bring in this whole element of almost studying it from this body response. Because I think when I was hearing you speak, I just realized like all the other places that I probably didn't even realize that I was experiencing shame just by the way you described it. It just opened up all these possibilities of like, oh, like when like, yeah, I totally relate to those experiences that you said around open up your computer, looking at your budget, or whatever it is that suddenly feels like, oh, this like
fraction,
inadequacy. Yeah.
smallness,
These
yeah.
different qualities. Well, so to come back to my primary question, so do you feel like self-love in a way is an antidote to all that?
Yeah, I do, because there's first the aspect of self-love has like, which, we skip over, but it has these concept of awarenesses and mindfulness, because you got to find where you are with your own sense of self, where you are around what you're feeling. And that part is the awareness part. And we can't have that, like, and move forward. And so the antidote is having those awarenesses. And then what do you do with that? Which is the concept of mindfulness that I don't really have enjoyed, is just be an observer. And to be observer, then what? Because there's always an after that. Are we judging what we're observing? What are we doing with this information? And I hope I'm still, you kind of
Yeah,
fill it
you
in.
cut out too for a moment.
Uh, Maybe I will try doing it in my living room just to see if it has better quality. But I'm just gonna go back to sharing what I was saying. Love is the antidote that comes after having those awarenesses.
Mm.
So if I'm building that sense of awareness within my body and like in what I do and how to react to things, well, what is that? What do we do with that awareness? A lot of the times we kind of beat ourselves up with that awareness, and we want to change those things and we want to make them better. And so I believe sometimes training our awarenesses can be also really tricky, because I've seen it be so used against me using that against me, being like, great, now another thing I need to change, another thing I need to change,
Right.
another thing I need to change. So yeah, the first part is bringing awareness, and that then there's that compassionate self-love piece that is the next step. And that's why I skip over to the next step, because I know a lot of people are teaching mindfulness, and that's going to be part of my process regardless of like bringing awareness to our patterns and our ways of being and our embodiment. But that piece of sharing that compassion and that sense of, I know why I'm triggered right now and what my needs are, and for me to bring in the inner child concept to provide that sense of love, because it really comes from that back in the day stage of where we just hold these not enoughness and these things about us. So why don't we just go back to that inner child and just give it what it needs at that time, instead of putting another person, on them. Yeah.
Right. So how about you walk us through like an example of what you just said so we can have like a vivid experience of that?
Yeah. Okay.
Like either a client of yours or yourself, something that you kind of like, could help us. Like, because when you gave me those different examples earlier, I was just like, oh my gosh, I thought I had understood all these places where there could be shame in my life, but like you kind of made me see, oh, like all those little moments. Wow, like it just opened up this world for me. And I'm just wondering if you could do something like that for that experience that you just
Yeah. Like, okay, I will use a client story that's just recent, like recent as in today recent. Um, a client is feeling that one of my clients was feeling um, this this situation. She's been in relationships with guys, and the last one exactly that didn't want to commit to her and just basically have a relationship without really the title and the safety that she needed. Um and then to kind of say like, okay, that's gone, that relationship is now gone, and I know I did the right thing by choosing myself in that and asking for what I need, but there's still a feeling of not enoughness playing, that maybe I'm not that good enough for this person. And it gets hard because you have this awareness maybe that the truth is that really that was exactly how it's supposed to be. He's not looking for one, I'm looking for one. You can bring all these awarenesses or like these perspectives that are real, but then inside somehow you're still feeling connected to that inner child that feels neglected, rejected, abandoned. And you can't tell that child anything.
right.
And so that part's really activated.
Totally, yeah.
When that part's really activated, what do we do with that part? And that's the part where I feel like, it would be nice either we get support with somebody, we show our vulnerability. Look, right now I know that this is the truth and everything is working out, but I'm feeling really upset and sad, and I want you to remind me that I'm beautiful, right? That I'm worthy, right? To a friend. And if that can't happen, so that's why I say it's always the self-love part is like, let me bring a tool in where maybe you don't have somebody around to share that love and you're really in it, to go to that part of you and really see what is happening. And I can't take step by step is because I take them through a process in meditation, which maybe we can do after if you'd like. But it's kind of like you get connected to that inner child and you see what the inner child's going through, and you just get to witness yourself. And then from there, you actually share out loud the love.
Mm.
And especially if you're somebody that likes words as their affirmations and language, then it does wonders to just share that piece of compassion, wisdom, and truth. Or maybe you like touch, to just visualize you holding your little girl and herself, and just she's feeling unloved.
Yeah. No, it's amazing how powerful inner child work is, isn't it? Like, just how much our imaginations can sort of go back and sort of recreate new pathways and ways of being and messages that this little child seems to have gotten, and just like allow it to completely alchemize almost, I could say.
While you were saying, I was just remembering, I'm witnessing, because I'm doing this work so often where I see my inner child, is that I sometimes literally get triggered and I go like, and I make this face out. Like, I would never do that, because before it would be like, that's a child face. Like, what do you mean sad? But I literally would be triggered and I'd be like, and I'm like, wow, I'm so in touch with my inner child, because that's what literally my little girl would be like. I actually make my face, like, I can't do it as well as I am when I'm triggered in like sadness, where I'm like,
You did that bottom lip pretty well.
even more when it's like real. I'm like, whoa, I just noticed I changed my face because I allowed it.
Yeah.
I allowed myself to be. And so it's kind of cute for me now to be like, oh, my little girl is feeling sad and like upset and like triggered. And so funny, I bring this up especially when sometimes my roommate's on the phone and I'm talking and it triggers me and it brings all up my shit, and I'm like, she's not looking at me while I'm talking, and then I'm like, I actually get triggered, and I think that's when I made the face to be like
Totally. Well, like, yeah, that's such a big trigger for so many people, that whole feeling about not being heard or not being important enough. Um, but yeah, I would love, I don't know if you feel comfortable with this, but it would be so interesting to hear what your journey was to come to valuing this and realizing like this is important work. Like, what in your personal biography brought you to this concept of self-love?
Yeah, well, I've been a searcher for a very long time, and a seeker, a searcher. Sorry about that. My journey started with my past. I'm from India. I came when I was 11, and I lost my mother at a very young age when I was 4, and so I was grappling with grief and low self-esteem, and not only that, I also just moved into a new country and wasn't a sports player like in this new country that really admires that about people, and just wasn't academic, and I just had like so much run in the show of like not worthy, no less confidence. I had, only thing that I had going for me was like my looks and my dances, and I really just like took that, and I was like, okay, this is where I can find a little bit of self-worth, but everything else was like challenging and hard. And Yeah, and it was like, okay, let's look at grief. And once we started looking at grief, I just remember my first session I had with Joseph, who's then my counselor. I was like, I want to do this. And he wasn't like a counselor. He was like a bit different. He was a coach and just consultant and shared his perspective. It wasn't like a typical therapy session. It was my first time. And I was just like, done. Like, I want to do this. But he was like, well, what if I told you you're too young to start? And I was like, okay. So then just went from like this search. So eventually it was just, I got super attracted to building awareness, and that led me to meditations and psychology, Buddhist psychology, which then led me to trauma, and also I was really intrigued because relationships is where I would find most of my pain. And so I was like, I think life will be good when I know how to do relationships. And so I started looking for that. But all of that wasn't love. Like, I wasn't looking for love. I was just looking to feel better and to understand myself and to grow. Those were like my motivations. And then I knew I had trauma. So I was like, what's trauma and what's inside me that's trauma? But all this stuff still kept me pretty, like, I felt very proud of I would say even like a year ago, I would say like I was pretty amazed by who I am, who I became from this pursuit and all that stuff. But I didn't feel like my life was manifesting into what I wanted to create. And I still felt very, like, I would say low on my worth and stuff like that. And so I wasn't seeing the results that I felt I could actually help other people with, because otherwise I would have just felt an imposter. And I started getting good with emotions and awarenesses of my trauma, but like that second piece of like bringing in the love was like really something I was missing. And then when I started to witness that and took a look at that and start practicing self-love and using some tools like visualizations and meditations and just using hypnosis and other ways to kind of reach and express my love to myself. Because before I thought self was yoga day, and I just knew it wasn't impacting me. Like I didn't understand how like I could feel nourished by just yoga. It wasn't doing it for me. And I'm a verbal affirmation type of person with my love language. And so once I started to actually share love to myself through some of these practices, that I was like, oh, I was just missing a tool.
Right.
And I have worked on myself enough of my compassion. I really do feel a lot of compassion. So I'm sure it's there. It's just me practicing it on myself. And yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So like so when your mom passed away, was that one of the reasons why you guys moved to Canada, or was it not at all related?
No, it wasn't. No, that was always on the books, I think. And it was just a matter of when. But my dad's family basically all had been migrated out of India. So yeah, we were just the last ones there.
And so did you grow up mostly just with your father, or did you have brothers and sisters as well, or?
I grew up with just my father and grandparents.
Right.
I have a very unique story, and my differences is what also pushed me again away from my roots as well. And that was, it was really hard coming to Canada after the loneliness was really intense and big. And even though I had family here, I didn't feel as connected to my family in India, and just around that community kind of way of living wasn't there. So it was really not only like the grief was just overbearing, because it just felt I was missing not only my mom, but just the whole way of living, and feeling really lonely. And just, yeah, loneliness was huge. Those were all like factors that were like, I need to help myself out because it's not
Like
feeling.
how did you experience alone? Like I love that exercise at the beginning where we looked at it really at a physical level. Like how would loneliness, we talked about shame, how it would show up in the body, but like what would loneliness look like in the body?
Deep longing, like a deep longing. And it was all grief. Now I can feel it as grief, because I feel the grief. I feel I'm feeling the missing of something, which is really loneliness. Because I feel alone in loneliness, but you can be alone and not feel lonely. So there's a lack of a connection, which was the depth of my grief consistently. It was always this feeling. And I was alone a lot too, because I was the only child, and everybody saw me. They're like, "You're such a people person," and I was like, and I am, totally am, but I just didn't have that energy around me so much. And so it was really even weird to be like, okay, I'm losing myself completely around all these people all the time.
Right.
I had to go to that extreme and see like, oh my gosh, actually, like that is even sometimes more destructive. And so now I don't feel lonely, and know if I feel lonely, it's a lack of connection. And
Mm-hmm. And it's like lack of connection to self and to others.
yeah, it's lack of connection, period.
Yeah.
So much. And so yeah, the quickest way. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but you're like, wow, I'm calling everybody. Why is nobody picking up right now? And you're like, okay, that's my time to really take care of myself. And I've
Right.
had those in the past many times where I'm like, you playing with me, God, like seriously, like, what's going on? And so I've had that a lot where it's like, okay, this is my time to fill my own cup.
Mm-hmm.
And also find the balance of wanting and needing people and community, and being okay to lean on that and to feel like neediness coming up, because
Yeah.
I have needs.
Yeah, of course. So you mentioned as well that there was kind of like, out of this grief and out of this loneliness, that there was also like, before you kind of really developed this tool of self-care and self-love, there was that the acute moments of I don't know how you worded it, but it was like kind of saying something to the effect of like, it's kind of this element of maybe going out of yourself to the point where it becomes toxic in some different, whether or pain, there's some moments of things, something like that. um does that ring a bell? I can try to see what I'm trying to refer to.
What was the question though? Like
The
what
question is like, I'm trying to get some examples of just like moments where this acute losing yourself. What would that
Like,
look
are you
like?
talking about the ones of when there was extreme connection and a lot of people, and then me losing my sense of self there too? Is that what you were talking
Well,
about?
just like you sort of mentioned your biography. Let me just pull it out for a second. Um, I'll just get it here. So you had um, so including the most unlovable parts of themselves. Okay, wait. Okay, so and grappling grief that manifested in depression and low self-worth behaviors. I think that's what I was looking for. The self-worth behaviors. Like, what would that look like?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, not having boundaries, people pleasing, saying yes to everything. Um,
What would be like one situation where you're like, wow, when you look back at it, you're like, poor Taran. Like, you just like want to give her so much love because that was such a difficult situation.
oh man. Well, I've had so many of them, but like I've just imagined, like when I was watching from the outside, and I still see this in a lot of people, um, that have a lot of sense of proving themselves to people, and like really making expectations be mine, like everybody's expectations to be, because there's just no way that I would want to fail that and lose that love. And so I remember when I was working for myself, and I see this when people are working for people, that I had just so much expectations on that I needed to meet, that I was just burning myself out by like really not being able to handle what if this doesn't go right, and like that awareness of them like seeing that I didn't make it. And for example, I just when I look at when I do the shadow work parts, like I always look at this part of me, which was around the same time I was like burning myself out, just feeling like I have to say yes to everything and do everything and lose myself in the process. Like I literally can't imagine saying no to that, like, or that not happening. Like I can't think of that. That's going to be the worst, like, and then just consistently live my life like that. Um, is when I like was living in Bali, had my own business, and I was just like doing so many things, trying to survive also, and trying to say yes to things and have a social life and do video work. And it was just a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I did slip up a lot of things. And because I was already had so much on my plate, and I felt like burnt out. by living there at times and trying to do everything and not enough stuff for just myself. And I felt like I left there because I was overdone doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's so many beautiful people around too that I just did not want to disappoint or look. And I remember at the end I left and I asked a couple of my friends, I was doing shadow work and I was trying to get parts of me that people think are self-sabotagey or that are unlovable, so that I could love on them and like really see what's behind them, right? And so I think one of them was the thing that came out, which was like, sometimes you say yes and you can't do the things that you say yes to. And I was like, oh my gosh, there it is. Like, that is the most unlovable, non-integral thing. And I was just like, thank you. And I just knew from there,
Like you would go around asking people like the truth kind of thing of what they saw, like feedback kind of thing.
Only for like certain people, not like everybody. It was just a couple people I was really
trusted.
That I trusted to find this information so I can really see it. And you know, it's not easy getting those information, but it's part of the process.
Because it almost feels like it can be death, right? Receiving that, it's like, oh my God, it's the thing that I'm gonna like. This is gonna kill me that people see this.
Absolutely, and that's what gives you like now, because I've seen this over and over. It gives me the strength to, anytime I'm really fearful about something that I'm stepping into, I'm just like, I visualize what's the worst that can happen. If I can get the feedback of like that I'm like not integrity at times, which is my high value, that I could like, if I can handle that, then I can handle a lot of things. I know but it's one of those things like, you know, worst case scenario, we're trying to always like look good. And if we don't, then like, okay, can I be okay with that? So I was looking at that and my friend said that and I was like, wow, okay. This is the thing that I wasn't trying to come off of, and I did because I overdid it. And I found that part really unlovable. And I was I'm like, I knew exactly. I wasn't even listening to my nose. I was overdoing it. I knew what was driving it, but still, you know. And eventually I just had to find acceptance and honor of that being what I was doing and where I was at, and give myself love and permission to not make everybody's expectation be mine. And yes,
Almost like unmeshing that and making space.
yeah, and saying and just tuning in, knowing, oh, my habit is to say yes. I've been doing something for so long. How can I just create, even if it's intuitively yes, I'm like, I'll think about it. But a lot of the times, some of the things I'm just like yes, but like most of them, even if I want to, I'll be like, I'll give it a think and I'll let you know.
Just to like counter that quickness that happens.
And it's very, very interesting because my impulses have got me in amazing places, like in my life, you know, just following that impulse. So it's a very tricky dance because I don't want to lose that either. So
yeah, it's interesting, like that difference when something comes from almost that trauma place and there's a quickness, and this like deep, like, you know, feeling of connection of like, yeah, this is the thing I want to do, or like, yeah, there's nothing gonna stop me. Yeah. So this has been sort of going in my mind a little bit. I'd be curious about how you've experienced either with your clients, or if you want to share something that you've noticed in your life, um, uh, around the whole question around sexuality, how it plays out when there's that feeling of people pleaser, where there's that, you know, don't say no and say yes all the time. Like what kind of situations can arise have you seen?
yep, that has affected my sexuality as well. It totally has. The way we do one thing, we do other. Majority of my sexuality experience of growing up was just like confusion and not not understanding what's yes and what's no. Way too many things happening in the mind, way too fearful to say no to that. Then what is that gonna have a ripple effect? Am I gonna be able to reach what I want to reach if I say no? Is it gonna kill the vibe? Is it
Totally.
yeah. Is that anxiety? Because it's for me, I know how anxiety works. You bring in an anxiety person brings in anxiety, and now we're in this ripple effect and kind of like roar of anxiety. We need one person to be cool, the other one person to have their anxiousness, and that usually doesn't happen. So it's really freaky when you do share your no's, because yes, like you never know what energy you're going to meet on the other end. So for me, yeah, it was mostly a confusing
Yeah.
time.
I love that you're just sharing this, because I think it's an experience that so many people have, of this confusion, and this and most people have some form of abandonment or rejection, or maybe not being good enough feeling. So it gets so amplified in these dynamics around sexuality, and yet sexuality is such a sensitive interface, that gets so amplified. And so I love your description of being like, okay, if I don't do this, what's going to happen? There's a lot of calculation, a lot of contraction, a lot of worry. And I'm sure that, I guess, I don't know if this is something that your clients bring up as well. Is it something that they talk about? Is it something you've seen, in your environment?
Sexuality hasn't been my top front as with my clients. I'm getting more people curious about their presence in sexuality and wanting to up level that. And I think majority of people that I surround and people that are like, especially with the Indian community, are women that have absolutely no idea what's going on and are being taught by younger males that they're having connections with, and that being their center of education and experience. And so what I can judge by that is that there's very very little. But what I'm getting to see now is there's desire for more empowerment and curiosity for what that looks like and feels like for themselves. I have been, in my experience, it's all about where you're at and what you perceive. It's hard. I can say my experience, and I'm literally a person with my own traumas, my own thought process, manifesting, creating life in front of me. And so I have very little experience of what the collective is. And I don't know if we can ever have that understand fully, but as science tries to. But like, I just feel the more comfortable slowly that I've become in knowing what my needs are, that life has been showing me that by my experiences coming through. Mm-hmm. And so I had to do a lot for many years, had to do a lot of like celibacy aspects to just kind of like really change the pattern. But then that really became like, whoa, now I'm actually really like afraid.
And
afraid, and okay, now that I'm entering that, I want to ask, I had to ask a couple men that were doing sexuality work to be like, really, is it okay to ask to go slow? Because something inside me saying that that's unfair.
Right.
And that's not what you like. Right. And what is that? Like, I need answers and I need to know. Because as long as like a collective, you can give me a collective answer, then I can be like, all right, you, the one that's selfish and wants what you want, nuh-uh, that's not working, So I just had to kind of feel into this on a collective level, somebody especially that teaches sexuality would be like, does that actually feel good for you too? Because if I'm already have such a hard time taking space, and what I'm asking for is a lot. And is this like something pleasurable? And I've had men show up that kind of, I mean, he gave me an answer of being like, absolutely, this is, because anybody that isn't, and even with me, I've noticed that if I'm trying to get, like, the goal in sex has been forever for all of us, has been the end orgasm. And if we stop taking the goal out, which to me, I don't live for my goals, I live for the presence and the beauty of life. And I like to have those goals as something I'm not obsessed with, but something I'm trying to reach, be aware of, intently go to. So I feel like with sex, our thought process is so, I would say masculine in that way, or like obsessed with creating that end goal, that we lose that presence. And he said that a man that's obsessed with the goal is not really present. And when he's present, he will enjoy what you're enjoying, because it's the moment created. And
Beautiful.
it is. And it gave me permission to be like, okay, then that means that I'm not selfish for asking that, and that there are people that understand this,
right,
and aren't reaching for the ultimate, I want to bust a nut. And so ever since I've had like beautiful experiences of men holding that space. So it's just like, yes, in our head are we blocked? We can maybe know this, but what do we need to hear to clear that out? And that was what I felt was like, there's a nagging thing. I can take ownership about what I want, but I'm caring about the other person as well in this space, and we're creating it together.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, the other opposite's like being that princess that's like completely disconnected. And it seems like, it's not like that's not what you want either. It's like there's this connection piece, and pleasing, but like feeling as well that there's a space for you to exist as well in your experience.
Yeah.
So, like, if you were to see a young woman from your community kind of having a bit of self-esteem issues, maybe she's dating all these different guys, and she comes to you, what kind of advice would you give her?
Like, in what do you think she desires first? What's her desire?
Right.
Why, like, I'm just curious, what is she?
Like, I mean, like in terms of like when I hear you speak about your experience, and you're like, there's a lot of confusion at first in relationships, a lot of difficulty saying no or asking for your experiences to be met. If you saw, and then you kind of described like in your community that you saw maybe a lot of women that, they're being educated by these young guys that don't know it either. What would you give her to empower her? Like, what would be the piece that you could give to her that would be really nourishing to her?
It's like something that I'm still working on myself. I've been so obsessed with, in the past, like learning how to communicate better, and like wanting a better relationship that's like equal, and like, seeing where I'm at and what I'm wanting and what they're wanting. Sorry, Zen. And just doing a lot of that, like shoulds and woulds and things. And if that's where they are out, like I said, I'm still working on this, where I'm like, does it feel good? Does it feel pleasurable when you're with them? Like, what's your experience like? If you're not feeling cared for, loved for, or cared for as in like he doesn't owe you, but like, do you feel
Valued and
valued,
nurtured, or whatever it is?
past your looks, past and what's out?
Yeah.
How do you feel? And if you don't feel good, that's enough of a reason. Like, I want people to be in things where they can look at themselves, but if they're already coming at me for a desire to, if they have self-worth issues, they're probably just sticking around to things that don't actually make them feel good because they should, or whatever it is. And I know, I can't believe I'm saying any of this, because I used to be in this space and being like, it's not all about feeling good. But it kind of is, in a way. It's about deserving love. And it is going to be coming back to, what's your own relationship with yourself? How much are you being emotionally available for you. I think that's one of the most important things that I've had to work on, and I'm teaching my clients too, is you always say you want emotional available man. How available are you to what your feelings are?
Mm-hmm.
Process them.
That is such a bingo, like right there. Like, how available are you to your feelings? Like, listening to them.
Yeah, I had this idea. It finally clicked into me when one day I was moving into this apartment, and my roommate was gone that night, and I was moving in, and I was tired. I didn't really desire to be around people, but I kind of felt a little bit of this loneliness that came in. And I was like, well, what am I feeling? Like, oh, I would just want somebody to ask me how it feels to be moving into this place today. And I was like, great. But I had to ask that to myself. And I was just like, okay, I'll ask you, how do you feel about moving? Because I don't actually feel like I wanted to talk to anybody at that time.
Yeah.
You know, but I wanted to be in connection to my emotions and what's going on for me in this move. And so I was like, wow, okay, I was waiting. If I didn't do this, then I would have waited for somebody to be like, how is it? But that first night, it's like a lot of feelings, right? And so it's like, okay, that's what I'm needing right now, is just for me to be in in holding space for me to figure out and to process this change.
Hmm. Hmm. So you
Okay.
asked yourself that question. You had a bit of an inner dialogue with yourself, and it fulfilled that yearning of like being able to express what
Yeah.
was going on. I love how you said like in connection with actually your feelings. Like that's all you really wanted, is to be in connection, like some place where those emotions would make sense, that they could be seen and like acknowledged.
Yeah, because I think as a therapist and a client, what we hold space for is complete emotional availability. You know, I mirror that every day for my clients. And it was like, right now, I want to be, I don't know what I'm feeling. So I just want to be asked that and have that space held.
Mm.
And I look for that in a relationship, but I'm like, okay, I've got to fulfill those needs of mine regardless of whatever. Not everybody's going to be with you all the time, being a little therapist asking you how you feeling about this experience. So
Sure. Yeah, it's like really cultivating that relationship to self really creates resilience and fulfillment, really. It kind of like it gives you that space to be, and they're not as like clinging on to it for coming from another place. Because probably if you're just waiting there for that person to ask, like there's something that's not completely in your power either, right?
yeah, not in my power in a way, or just I think I get connected to the fact of lack there. Oh, there isn't anybody, like that connects. There's a lack there of like, I'm missing this connection, therefore I'll just wait for it to be present, and therefore I'm connected to the fact that it's not present.
Right. So yeah, so if we go back to the example of that young woman that's in a relationship with the man's not available for her. And now she starts discovering, oh, I'm actually not available to feel what I'm
Well,
actually
what's
feeling.
already happening is I'm already feeling that I'm not lovable and likable, which is why I can't change it. She's very authentic, real to what she's actually feeling. She cannot get her brain to get that part away. She cannot logic herself out of that experience right now. It's real. She's feeling not enough, and not liked, not wanted, rejected. So that's there. Okay, it's there. It's alive. It's your inner child feeling alone, feeling rejected, feeling abandoned. Um, how can you be with that part of you?
Hmm.
And like give it the love that it needs.
Hmm. Hmm.
sometimes it's just feeling connected to and visualizing like that, you know.
Mm-hmm. And I
That's
love how it goes back to that idea at the beginning that we talked about, how there is a feeling of retraction maybe, and then there's a speeding up. When we don't want to feel, we just speed up. So in those moments of like, not feeling enough in a relationship, you speed up. And here it's just like slowing it down and letting it sort of come in, that just being with that feeling. And there's a whole new space that gets created for that person,
mm-hmm.
and new possibilities.
Yeah, where you get to create what you truly desire rather than like. But I think this work is, I've been gracious enough to be like, I'm gonna make this my life's work. When I see this not being easy for us to just have this understanding and how to deal with our triggers, our lack of love, connection, that these processes now feel a little bit like second nature, but it's confusing learning these things. But once you kind of get going, it's like, okay, I made that connection once, I can make that connection again.
Mm-hmm. And I love how you just make it present to all of us, that like this is something that is a ongoing process that you just keep on working on and keep on dealing with. I think you were talking at the beginning about how the shame thing is like, oh, you still notice things, boop, it's just there. And it's just this relationship almost that you start creating with yourself, I'm getting, and it gets deeper and deeper connected.
Yeah, the idea is not that I'm fully healed, and it's just that we just need tools to keep that level of awareness and processing alive, so more young things can come in our life, and complex or not complex. And
what do you feel is your biggest tool in your toolbox that you're like, thank God I have that in my toolbox?
Oh, so many. Well, that's a good question. I think grief.
Grief?
Yeah.
Having
Yeah.
grief as a tool?
Yeah, like, or being okay with, like, I think emotions and grief,
Mm.
and anger and stuff, and just processing emotions. I feel like I'm really grateful that I have that. And yeah, like letting somebody go, or yeah, just dealing with changes
Mm-hmm.
that can be grief inducing.
Right.
Feel really happy about having that be a process I can take myself through.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just sharing this to my client the other day. Like, when I was starting to become emotionally like aware and like how to process, I remember I was leaving Canada for the first time after so long, and it's like a big move, and I was just like, it was a lot, right, for me, especially because I'm just so attached to my dad and my family, that it was, I mean, I had traveled alone for a long time, but I just knew this was like going away. And I let grief of that come up a month before, and whenever it was coming up, I let it come up. And I processed it with the way that, and everybody else was so uncomfortable and was like, oh my gosh, don't cry yet. Like, don't cry yet. My dad, including, don't cry yet. You're still here for another couple hours. It's like that. And I was just watching their discomfort with all of this. And when the airport came, I was already processed out. I was so excited.
That's awesome. Well,
Like,
I just have one last question. I think it's like, just from what you said, like, you've really come to a place where you started to, the word in French is so much better, apprivoiser, but in English, it's not domesticating, but there's another term. But you sort of
it's part of the life. It's part of the experience. I brought it in.
you sort of learn to hone the skills, right? Basically.
Yeah.
But your dad, you said your dad and the people around you were like, they just don't want to hear you cry, don't want to have you crying. So what do you explain, like, it's so many people's difficulty with just like letting this thing happen? Why is
Oh,
it so uncomfortable?
oh, that's just such a hard thing. It's so hard to explain emotions to people. It's so challenging. And so I don't, but with my dad, I try to here and there, but it's always just really hard. And so for me, I just get made fun of, and I'm like, okay, I know myself. I know what I'm doing. I teach that to my clients too. I'm just like, look, your parents have had a way of living for a while. They don't feel comfortable with emotions. They think that's weakness. They think there's actually something wrong with you for experiencing it. They're worried. They will never understand this work until they're ready and desire to deal with their emotions. Otherwise, they need like a couple of their friends into it too. They need like their homies to be like, yo, you know that like crying is not bad, right? And then they might get into it. But if you're gonna tell them, it's not gonna land, and you'll just have to be resilient enough to know what I'm doing is good for me. And even though it looks weakness, like dumb, like what is she even doing? She's gonna fuck up her life with that emotional intelligence. Let them.
And do you think it's like this kind of like intense spark of like intensity? Like it's almost like I almost see it like this emotion, and it's almost like a saber laser or something, and just like it's like it just hurts people if they don't know how to deal with it. They just you know.
Yeah, like I think people don't understand how to be with their like they feel uncomfortable with the anger and like with that like sense of fire. It's like there's
Intensity.
so many good reasons for that to feel unsafe, and I will never let go of that because I felt unsafe with all that energy, and I saw how it went, and I saw how violent anger can bring and all that stuff. I get it. It's traumatizing. And so, but now I'm like, I enjoy somebody bringing in how they're feeling. I'm like, awesome. Like, you got emotional intelligence actually versus what people would think, because you
Right.
should be but it's like a
Deep
dance,
programming.
right?
She's like this very deep programming of like
Yeah.
that. No, it's unsafe. And
Yeah, and because it has been in many good situations. um but when somebody's aware that they're still in their like, I think that's what meditation has been the basis of my work, I think. And I think I wouldn't be anywhere without it, really. And that's just meditation, just observer,
yeah.
just training your ability to be an observer will
Mhm.
still will help you in all aspects in your life, because you have a sense of another connection to something that's way more grounded and present. And I don't know how to explain that works, but it works because you have a sense of still seeing what's going on. When you are like, I knew what was happening. I was
Yeah.
fully aware what was happening, like that sense of connection, I think, is so important, because then you can be like, I'm emotional and I'm into it. Like, you know what I mean? You have like, you're still holding on to yourself. It's funny. My cousin just the other day was like, I was telling to my sister, like, I want to feel you, get mad at me, like do something, at least be real. And I was like, I love that. Like,
Right.
I like your sense of, I have a lot to say and I'm feeling my emotions and I want to bring them in. This is not
Yeah.
about coming in here with processed
Perfect.
stuff.
Yeah. Perfect poise. Well, we're coming to the end of our
Yeah,
interview, but it was so fascinating. I loved it how you really brought us into these intricate places and just allowed us to just like open up little pieces, really be able to see them. So that's really a gift.
I'm so
Um,
glad that you allowed you ask me these awesome questions, and for me to like, you'd held the emotionally available space, and it's like my
Good.
favorite space ever. So I'm so grateful, and you're always just such a, you always hold that space. It's not just now. You're always leading through curiosity
Mm.
and being very present to what's coming through. And I just really appreciate that. And I want to hear what, I left this, but I'm just like, what are you up to? What's going on? Please let me know.
Yeah, well, I would love to hear from you first, and then I'll share what I'm up to after. But I think I read like that you're doing something.
Yeah, so I've been doing just free self-confidence workshops. I did it last week. It was so good. I'm saying that it was so good. I was even on track with my timings. It was that good. I was like, what? This is flow. But yeah, people really enjoyed it. So I'm doing another one this
Like
Saturday.
a workshop,
It's a workshop.
like about 10 people or so, like online or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, last time we had 20, and so it now, or yeah, I think that's, but like, yeah, I've kind of, it feels a little bit more intimate, but I'm open. It's gonna be like just a process where people get to experience meditations and write stuff down.
Cool.
Then I have a group program coming for some of this specific like areas and shadows and inner child and boundaries for 8 weeks, and yeah, that's coming up.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Well, I know that you came once to my incubator blitzes. Um,
Oh yeah.
it's it's the end process of like 6 weeks or 12 weeks, depending on which one you came to, of work that's kind of based in the book Sex Up Your Life, but we take themes and allow people to like deepen their just these different trigger points actually around different themes of things that are kind of usually in our shadow life around sexuality. It could be easily like, taking on the conversation about people pleasing. That's why I was so excited when you talked about that, because it's like, yeah, these are big themes that actually influence us in so many different ways and how we show up. But if we don't address it, we don't even know it's guiding the show. But it's really exciting. So these different, about this group, I think there's a 10 to 13 people that have taken on like these different themes, and they're going to be presenting their work in spoken word tomorrow night. So anyone that's interested can join us via Zoom, or just send me a private message, and we'll let them come and witness these people who've gone through this alchemical, transformative, creative process.
What I noticed last time I went to them is how like is the transformation. Like I don't get to see it, but I get them, they get to share like, this is what I've realized, this is what I've come to terms with, this is what I've learned. And all of them were so big, and I was like, in my head I was like, oh my gosh, that's exciting, because they don't even know how this is going to ripple out in their life. And so
Exactly.
I saw a lot of that last time. So you've obviously been getting them into connection to some big changes or awarenesses and shifts inside.
Yeah, that's what I've been really enjoying, is the whole creative process and how powerful that is to allow people to accept parts of themselves that maybe if they're just in a personal development thing, they would just be like trying to be that good like student, but now it's like they just have to explore the dark side, because that's what creates interesting work, you know? So they really get to like explore different parts of themselves. So yeah, so thanks for being there, first of all, and thanks for supporting me and getting this work out there. So thanks so much. And it was so fun talking to you. And definitely we should touch in base and have another conversation on another intricate, lovely, delicious theme of like growth and personal knowledge. And, like it's just so nourishing to give us space to get into that space of feeling empowered to live the life that we actually want to live, as opposed to being more at the affect, or like in that kind of, what is it, the le manège that you have, like the roller coaster ride.
Yeah, I've witnessed that often. I do feel that people kind of vibe off the anxiety and the intensity of like all the things that are happening. And I feel that can be very destructive and
Yeah.
just not present. And it's okay, wherever we are, but to bring that intentionality of what you're trying to create, what you want moments to be, feels like, you know, that work hard, play hard. It's like work smart, play hard, you know, like how do we move into creating our life, and what do we feel about us being deserving and worthy and confident about doing that. And yeah, it just feels like if I can do it, you can do it, because I've gone through many things and come to this way. And and it's taken a lot of work, but trust.
You could give like one word of like the culmination. I know that there's still work to come, but if there's one word that would describe like what's this work's given, is made available to you, what would be that?
Yeah, I've got it. Right before you said something, I was just saying it. Self-trust.
Self-trust.
Completely the root basis of confidence.
Mm-hmm. Self-trust.
And that you cannot fake that shit, make up that shit. You can't fake it till you make it with that shit. It's
because self-trust also means that in a place of distrust, if everyone distrusting you, you still trust yourself.
Yeah,
it's a very powerful place to be.
Yeah, and to be honest, I've had more people celebrating my, like, building me up in my trust. So I've been able to, it's again, like we say, mirror. And so I've just had people be like, oh, you can get that, you, no problem, you can make that happen, no problem. I was like, thank you, like this is so great, because this is what I need to have in areas where I lose trust. Because when I say I should just say trust, but I had more trust in the universe, and I get into fight with the universe as well, not trusting it. Both that happens, but I've still had more trust in the universe than I've myself. And now there's the combination of both, which it's still a work in progress, but it's beautiful to see where I can be like, oh, I'm not worried about how that's going to happen anymore, because it will. And that is not just, I'm not worried about that because God is going to manifest and energies and my angels are going to be there and doing it, but it's like I'm going to be with them doing this. And so that is huge part of this experience. And I'm like, it's all about building my trust muscle. I feel this work has been
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, don't leave right away because I want to thank you after I say goodbye to everyone, but you might want to say goodbye to everyone too. But goodbye, everyone. Next week, we have another amazing guest called Natalie Cacon, and she's actually all the way in Montreal. And one of the reasons why I was so excited to interview her, she had this whole post around body neutrality. And I thought, hey, this is going to be a very interesting conversation. She has a yoga studio and she has this whole concept of how we can work in a body neutrality space. So I'm very curious. Maybe you'll be interested too. So next week, same time, same place, Facebook Live. So adios, amigos.
Bye. Thank you for watching.
Thank you so much again, Taran. It's always fun talking to you.
Can't wait to see you soon in person.
Take the live off. Okay, so are you still there?